Hello and welcome to the second recording for this year in film of 1978. The first recording, when I came to play it back to edit together, the sound was atrocious, and so the whole 25 minutes that I'd recorded were useless. But anyway, let's not dwell on that. 1978, I had me a blast, I believed a man could fly, and I thought it might be safe to go back in the water. Oh, there was also some strange guy going around talking about my precious. What am I talking about? Let's have a look through the films of My Life in Films, 1978. So, let's start as we always do with a quick look at the US box office for 1978. You can see at the top of the list, Superman. We're going to be talking about that later. I'm going to leave that towards the end. I'll talk about some other films before then. We've also got Grease, we've got Animal House, we've got Every Which Way But Loose, Heaven Can Wait, Hooper, Jaws 2, Cheech and Chong's first outing, Up in Smoke, Revenge of the Pink Panther, and The Deer Hunter. So another strong year, like I said previously. 1970s were quite a good decade for films. I think I'm probably going to find the same in 1980s, because obviously there's a lot in 1980s that would have influenced me at that defining age range. But in the meantime, in 1978, I'd just turned 5. So, as we spoke last time, I had started to latch on to films in 1977. So 1978, I was fully aware of any films that was taken to the cinema to go and see. Roundup of brief news from the film industry of this year. In the February of this year, David Begelman resigned as the president of Columbia Pictures, with Daniel Melnick stepping into the role in June. The reason for the resignation became apparent when it was revealed that Begelman was involved in embezzling funds. What he'd been doing is cashing cheques under actors' names and forging their signatures in order to get some cash and put it to one side. This was all brought to light when Cliff Robertson, the actor, was chased down by the IRS for $10,000 he'd never declared, that obviously he'd never actually received, and that started the whole proceedings. This was also the year of another huge scandal, and this is the biggest scandal in the film world ever. The Star Wars Holiday Special was aired. A horrific mash of sketches, music, animation, all around a contrived story about the Wookiees celebrating Life Day. The special is a part of geek lore, with pretty much anyone who ever loved Star Wars having the impulsive need to track down a copy of this at some point to see how bad it was. Nowadays you can easily find it online, but back when I was growing up, this was like a stuff of myth and legend. It was like, did this really exist? Who knows? Apparently there was rumours about like a small animation in there which had Boba Fett in it. We had to see this, and so you had to find someone who had a copy who could rip off a tape-to-tape copy on VHS so you could watch it yourself, and it is awful. It's not even one of those things that it's so bad that it's worth watching. It is just bad. It's bad. If you don't believe me, it is available online and you will regret it. Oscar wins this year saw Deer Hunter, Coming Home and Midnight Express dominate. And interestingly enough, Midnight Express I am watching today, because that's been on my list to watch for quite some time, and I feel that it's about time I got around to watching it. So let's talk through some of the key films from 1978 that had some kind of impact on me over the years. Now, I'm not going to be able to talk about every film that had some impact on me, because I'd be here all day. There's a load of films to work through, so I've got some select pickings for personal choices. I'm going to kickstart it with Dawn of the Dead, Romero's second film. It's Fate in the famous zombie series. It's got a new set of characters, a new location, this time a shopping mall where the survivors have set up residence, using it as a refuge from the zombie apocalypse going on. And the film's not only, in my opinion, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, zombie survival film ever. It's also the film that inspired so many other things that followed, either from Romero himself or from various other zombie films. A lot of them were within this. I mean, Night of the Living Dead set the basic idea, but this was the one that set the style and the tone that zombie films would take going forwards. It's also a great satirical look at consumer and mall culture, and it stands up well to the test of time today. There was a remake by Zack Snyder, one of the only good films by Zack Snyder, and well worth checking out, but that was not even a patch on Romero's Dawn of the Dead. Excellent film. If you've never had the pleasure, I urge you to go and watch it. Sticking with the horror theme, we've got The Medusa Touch, a psychological horror thriller, which was clearly trying to tap into a bit of like the Omen kind of aspect, because you got Richard Burton playing John Morlaw, a novelist who's found close to death after an attempt on his life. But as the investigator into the crime starts to look back through this novelist's past, he finds that a lot of people mysteriously die around him in strange, surreal ways. And it turns out that he's actually got psychokinetic abilities that he's using to make sure that his life goes the way he wants. And he's still using them from his bedridden hospital stay in order to exact revenge on those who are uncovering his secrets. Marvellous film. I rewatched this about 5 years ago, and it was one of them that I was scared about going back and rewatching, because I thought, I watched it when I was really young, and so maybe it had the impact on me because it was relevant. But no, it's a really good film. Great cast, well worth checking down. And speaking of The Omen, because I linked it into there, Damien Omen 2 came out this year. The Son of the Devil returns. It's set 7 years later. Damien, who survived the events of the previous film, is now living with a rich industrialist called Richard Thorne in America, surrounded by power. His progress to world domination as the Son of the Devil and bringing about the apocalypse is definitely on its way. Once more, anyone who seems to be an obstacle mysteriously dies in horrific ways around him. It's not as strong a film as the first film, but it's not a bad sequel. It follows the story along. It does more of the same. Let's just be honest, it does more of the same. It doesn't really surprise, it doesn't shock, and it is about the weird deaths that go on. And there's some great set pieces in here again. Worth seeing, just don't go any further. The third film was dreadful, but I'll talk about that in the year that it comes out. So space is the setting for the next couple of films. Well, not exactly space, more Earth. The first one being Capricorn 1. Now, this is a film that I've revisited a few times over the years. It covers the first manned mission to Mars and how it was completely faked. The astronauts are taken away from the launch pad, hidden away in seclusion, as the whole thing is faked and staged for the world to make it look like they went on it. However, things go dreadfully wrong when the landing capsule burns up in the atmosphere, and so the astronauts, in reality, should be dead if the mission had taken place. This means that they now fear for their own lives. They know that they're either going to be incarcerated for the rest of their lives to keep this all hush-hush, or they will be killed. And so they attempt to escape and bring their secret to the world. Elliot Gould, O.J. Simpson and James Brolin, absolutely brilliantly told drama with, a load of people throw it as like, oh, well, maybe this is really what happened with the moon landings. Maybe it didn't, let's be honest. But it's a great conspiracy thriller. It's worth checking out. And on another space one, you've got The Cat from Outer Space, the Disney great. This is a film that I keep trying to convince the wife and kids to watch now that we've got Disney+. It's a film which sees a UFO crash in America, gets taken away by the US government, and inside it the only occupant is a cat-like creature which can communicate and move things around via a collar around its neck. The cat is only wanting to repair its craft, and so it seeks the help of one of the scientists and researchers within the NASA compound in order to try to track down these items while stopping him from being captured by the government. It's fun family adventure. It was one that I watched when it came out at the cinema way back when I was a kid, and it's stuck with me ever since. It's not the best of all the Disney live action films, but you know what? It's got enough fun and entertainment in there to mean that it's nowhere near the worst. Warlords of Atlantis. Now, Doug McClure had been teaming up with Kevin Costner for many pulpy adventure films through the years. They'd looked at mysterious islands with dinosaurs on it and strange creatures. Now he's exploring for the lost city of Atlantis, which is hidden underwater and populated with a multi-class layered system of Atlantean folk. It's corny and pulpy and strangely fun. The kind of fun that when you're a kid you love, the kind of fun that when you're an adult you love after you've had a glass of wine or two. It's that kind of nonsense. If you consider it alongside the modern films of like Sharknado series, that if you can take them with the cheesy tongue-in-cheek aspect, you can enjoy it. That's what Warlords of Atlantis is. Jaws 2 was a film that told us that we could maybe go back in the water, or maybe not. Roy Scheider returns as Sheriff Brody, who once again begins to suspect that a great white is terrorising Amity Island again, and once again finds that the mayor and everyone else don't believe him, because why would they listen to him? It's not like he was right last time. Now, it's more of the same. It's more of the same build-up. But there's some good aspects in there that make it worthy as a sequel. There's a focus on, like, again, Brody's family life. And this film works to the climax. That means the whole reason for going out and hunting down the shark is not directly to hunt down the shark like it was last time. Now it's because all the sons have gone out with all their friends boating around the waters around, and that's where the shark starts to attack, and Brody goes out to save his son and his friends. So it's got a more personal feel to it. It's good. Obviously it's nowhere near the quality of Spielberg, because it was Spielberg's passion and determination that made Jaws what it is. With this, it just feels like a sequel, but it's a good sequel. We've got Grease came out this year. Now Grease, I remember seeing when it came out at the cinema as a kid, and I adored it. This is the tale set in the 50s, high schools, musical, John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John, iconic tunes, adapted from the stage play, and this was an impact on me as a youngster. I wanted the soundtrack album for Christmas, and I was upset that I didn't get this. I got a Shawaddy Waddy album, which my sisters were more than happy with. Well, one of them was, because she loved them. I wanted the Grease album, but good news was, one of my sisters got the Grease album for Christmas, so I still had access to it, and we would play it almost constantly. Love this film, still love it today, and will never tire of it. And this was one of the films that really put me on the track to enjoying musicals as a youngster. From this point onwards, whenever musicals popped up on TV, I'd sit and watch them. And so I got to look at films like Calamity Jane, My Fair Lady, etc., as they got shown on like Sunday afternoon specials. Grease was the musical that started it all off for the young me loving musicals. Convoy. Speaking of musicals, now Convoy was a strange film choice. Taking a 1975 country and western song and adapting that to a screenplay, that's a sign of desperation, and clearly someone who wanted to make a film to tie into the sudden fascination that there was with CB radio and trucker culture, which probably was kind of exaggerated from the previous year's Smoking the Bandit. Chris Christopherson plays Rubber Duck Penwald, and Ernest Borgnine is Sheriff Lyle Wallace, his longtime nemesis who keeps trying to trap him. It's directed by Sam Peckinpah, and it's not his finest moment. And without the fascination of the CB culture that there was, I mean, CBs were huge back then. Right up until the early 80s, when, you know, people used to have CBs in the home and everyone would try to talk to people on, like, switching up a channel. Nonsense, garbage. Don't worry your heads about it. The whole thing is definitely a product of its time. Is it worth watching? If there's nothing else. Hooper. Hal Needham teamed up once again with Burt Reynolds and Sally Field after Smoking the Bandit to do another film which gave him an excuse to throw loads of stunts on screen with a loose plot. This time the film itself is about a stunt coordinator on an action film. So Hal Needham was drawing on his own life experiences to tell this story. What makes this film work for what it is the stunt work. Once again, such as with Smoking the Bandit, the stunt work is great. It is absolutely thrilling. Hal Needham basically delivering what he used to do when he was just a stuntman. And Burt Reynolds' appeal. Burt Reynolds has a charisma and a charm, and it shone through this era. He's absolutely engaging in what would otherwise be a bit of a weak adventure. The addition of some cameos, including Adam West playing himself, helped the film along, and it's one of the first films that used a blooper reel during the end credits, which became a staple of Needham's films after this. A film to avoid. We've got a few disaster movies, and there's no more disaster than The Swarm. What a disaster. Killer bees escape from a military compound, killing everyone, and start heading to the big city and killing people. It's directed by disaster master Irwin Allen, and it's got names like Michael Caine, Catherine Ross, Richard Chamberlain, Olivia de Havilland, Slim Pickens and Henry Fonda. And it's one of the worst films ever committed to celluloid. It's worse than Paul Blart Mall Cop. That's how bad this film is. Avoid it. I watched it as a kid, and even as a kid I knew that it wasn't that good. And it wasn't scary or thrilling as a disaster movie should be. It was comical. And it didn't stand the test of times after the day of release. It's definitely not stood the test of time now. Another disaster movie that we had, this time with Rock Hudson and Mia Farrow, is Avalanche. Sees a ski resort that's hosting a tournament and figure skating contest hit with snowfall. It's typical disaster fare. It's semi-engaging, and it's definitely about 100 times better than The Swarm is. We spoke about Jaws 2 earlier. One film that was inspired by Jaws, clearly, but took a different approach, is Joe Dante's Piranha. Now, Dante is great at doing dark, satirical aspects of comedy and thrill, and this is no different. It's a low-budget B-movie. It got a cult following. It's got a charm to it that makes it entertaining viewing even today. It knows what it is. It doesn't try to be anything different, but it's clearly trying to cash in on the Jaws fascination. For proper horror this year, you don't get better than the film that defined how the slasher genre would work going forwards. John Carpenter's Halloween. It's the film that set it off. It's the film that made a star of Jamie Lee Curtis. It's the film that really put Carpenter on the map, and it's the film that has been emulated, copied, sequelised, remade, but has never been as good as the first film. Absolutely brilliant film. If you've never seen the original Halloween and you've only succumbed to the Rob Zombie messes or the more recent films, do yourself a favour. Go back to where it began. Go back to this film. Go back and love it, because you will. I guarantee it. So let's move away from horror, and let's just talk about a film that people say traumatised them as a kid, and I don't believe so many people were genuinely traumatised as a kid. I believe that as adults they've watched it and gone, "Oh, I'm surprised this isn't a higher rating, and so I must have been traumatised by it." I think a lot of people retroactively think they were traumatised because I was a kid when I watched this. In fact, I was 5 when I watched this at the cinema. I was never traumatised. I fell in love with this film. I read the book, and it's always a film that I go back to at least once a year. Watership Down. Richard Adams' book is brought to animated life with John Hurt, Richard Briers, Nigel Hawthorne and Roy Kinnear providing voices as a group of rabbits seek a new home after their burrow is destroyed by man. All the people who say that they were traumatised by this as a kid and it should be a higher rating aren't. They're making stuff up. They're talking nonsense. It shouldn't be a high rating. Kids should watch this. It's a great film and a great story if you read the book as well, which as a child it will help you understand the whole journey of life and death. So when you lose a loved one, you will understand more the whole journey that loved one's been on, and you'll accept the death more. Wrapping people up in cotton wool and pretending that things don't live and die and that brutality doesn't exist in the world is no way to go forwards. And if you're treating your kids like that, then they're going to grow up to be, actually, I dread to use the term, delicate little snowflakes. Every kid should be made to watch this from an early age. Everyone should be made to love this film, and everyone should watch it on a regular basis. Marvellous film, well worth checking out. There's the recent animated adaptation which was toned down a bit, but told a bit more of the extra story that was missing from the film that was in the book, and it's not bad, but nothing will ever live up to the original Watership Down adaptation. And another adaptation of a beloved book that came out this year is Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, the rotoscope animated film that was initially supposed to be part 1 of 2 and actually did okay at the box office and made the money, but they never gave the green light for the second film. It's a great telling of the story, it's got a style to it, it's got elements in there that were changed from the book, but when it came to Peter Jackson making his films, he was inspired by Bakshi's Lord of the Rings for some of the elements, and it's quite clear that this took place. Due to a problem in the early 80s when one of the first VHSs that we rented, the rental place tried to claim our video player had chewed the beginning of the tape, and so we were forced to buy it. I sadly had to own this from a very early age, and sadly had to watch it pretty much every day. Great film, well worth checking out. It's creepy, it's eerie, the animation style is perfectly matched to the tone of the story, and it tells basically the Fellowship of the Ring and half of the Two Towers story. It doesn't continue any further, so it does finish just after the Battle of Helm's Deep, but well worth checking out. Before I get round to the most influential film on me this year, let's just quickly mention Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Veronica Cartwright, Leonard Nimoy and Jeff Goldblum, what a bunch of names. It's a remake that had a nod to maybe being a sequel to the 1956 film. Pod people, alien invasion, and a dog with a face mask. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you've clearly never seen it, and you need to go and see this film. It was chilling, it is suspenseful, it stands up well, the effects work still stands up quite well. There are some shonky, wonky effects, but overall, it still keeps the atmosphere, and that closing scene is one of the most chilling closing moments on film ever. So I've not mentioned Jackie Chan in Drunken Master, I've not mentioned National Lampoon's Animal House, I've not mentioned Revenge of the Pink Panther, I've not mentioned Magic, International Velvet and so much more. But before I wrap up today, I need to mention just one film, and that film is Richard Donner's Superman. What can I say about this film that we didn't actually cover in episode 16 of the podcast? Because if you go and listen to that, you'll hear me and Lee talk about all the influences and all the love that we have for this film and what makes it still work today. It's a stunningly engaging comic book movie with a great cast, and despite, I'm a big Marvel fan. I subscribe to Marvel Unlimited, I read so much Marvel, I've always loved Marvel, but my favourite superhero will always be Superman, and that's because the impact that this film had on me. This caught my attention at that early age, and this was the film that made me want to read comics, because after this film came out, I wanted to explore the world of Superman. And over the period of starting to read some Superman and getting to watch some early Batman on TV, that was when my mum picked up some Marvel comics as well, and that's when I latched onto the Fantastic Four and embraced the Marvel culture. But Superman has still stuck with me, and Superman will always stick with me throughout my life. I adore the character. I think that it's the perfect characterization of hope, that we can all aspire to be as great as this person, but we will never achieve it, and that's what he should be as the ultimate hero. Not like the more recent incarnation, which didn't tap into the essence of the character. And I know some people like to say, but the more recent one's more comic book accurate. It's New 52 accurate. It's not comic book accurate. New 52 was an experiment that is finished now. It's finished. It was tied up a few years ago before Rebirth, when they got it back to normal and brought back the proper Superman. This is the proper Superman. Christopher Reeve is amazing. Margot Kidder is absolutely on fire as Lois Lane. All the cast are great. The pacing is brilliant. It slowly works through the life of Superman until he reveals himself to the world. The Lex Luthor is menacing, with a small element of strange, quirky humour. But his whole... he's not like a big fisticuffs villain. he's an intelligent villain, and that's what makes Lex Luthor such a good, formidable foe against Superman, is that he shows that you don't need might in order to take on Superman. You just need smart thinking. Great film. If telling you, just go listen to that podcast episode. You'll find out exactly what me and Lee love about this film in there. But suffice to say, this was one of the most influential films on me through all my life. And that is 1978. Done, dusted. I've not covered Wild Geese because I've not seen Wild Geese yet, and I've not covered Midnight Express because I'm watching that today. Thank you very much for watching. This has been slightly longer than usual. Like, subscribe, share, you know the business. If there's any films from 1978 that you feel that I've left out, or there's anything that you disagree with out of my list, pop them in the comments. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Filmfile UK is the address you'll be looking for. And for the upcoming years, if there's any films of the next decade that you think that I need to have covered, pop them in the comments, because if I've not watched them, it gives me a chance to get to watch them before it gets around to this, to see whether they deserve to be mentioned. Thank you very much once again. I'll see you next time.